Our method is used when a job has to have the cut lines exactly on the edge of the decals, having little or no white space around the decals. This can be overcome by bleeding the graphics, but in some cases this may be impossible to do. If this case, our method here is perfect in that each copy of the decal and cut line has its own set of registration marks to attain the super high cutting accuracy that is needed for this type of job. Here you'll start out with one decal. This is because the copy matrix is generally generated within our print driver or rep and not within Illustrator. Registration marks. I'll open our Cutting Master 2 registration mark dialog box. I will then select Type 2 Auto and click OK. But this time I'll reduce the mark size to 0.4 inches since the decal is smaller in area, not needing the larger registration marks. This will marks around my single decal. Now, but before I print, I want to remember to turn the cut layer off so I don't print the cutting path in your print driver or rep. This is where you may be given the option of not only the number of copies, but also the gap size between each registration mark block. If your gap size option, you can always print the image and physically measure with a ruler the distances between each block. A print driver or rip to make the copy matrix. Make the copies in Adobe Illustrator prior to sending the job to print. Unlocking the registration mark layer since it too will need to be copied. With the cut layer turned off. To make copies, I will select both the decal and the registration marks. I will open the Move dialog box by clicking on the Object pull-down menu, the Transform, and then Move. We will horizontal copies. Your Transform palette is not turned on. Turn now by pressing Shift 8. Once it's on, notice the horizontal value in that palette. The horizontal distance of our copy should be this distance with a ½ inch added to it. The vertical distance can stay 0 for right now. I will click Copy and not OK since I want to make a copy and not just move the object. I can press Ctrl D several times to start making copies in the horizontal direction. And since it's only 36 inches, I know to stop at this edge. We will make the vertical copies just by first selecting all our copies we have just made. Object, Transform, and Move to bring up our Move dialog box. I will take the vertical value in the Transform palette. I will add an inch to that value and enter it into the vertical distance. My horizontal value is set to 0 this time since we won't be making copies in that direction. And not OK to make one copy or one copy set. By pressing Ctrl and then D several times, we can start making copies in the vertical direction until there are approximately about 5 rows. I can now print the job, but the process doesn't stop here, because once the print is completed, I'll need to restore the drawing to its original one decal that I started with. After the print is finished, I will then delete all copies I had just made. Done, I'll relock the registration mark layer and prepare for cutting. Once the print is completed, place it into the cutter. Now remember, when orienting the media in the cutter, once again, you need to locate on the print the 2 corner registration marks that are at the bottom part of the screen in Illustrator. These are the marks that should be faced toward the front when placing the print into the cutter. Once the media is loaded, we can now open the Cutting Master 2 dialog box. Once open, you will immediately notice that the copies options is grayed out. But keep in mind that this is not the copies options that we're looking for. The copy option that we're looking for is under Advanced tab, under, once again, Use Registration Marks. I will again click on the Advanced tab and make sure that our Use Registration Mark box is checked. There are also X copies and Y copies. Since I have a 5 by 5 matrix, I will enter 5 into the X copies and 5 in the Y copies also. Now I know my copies are about a ½ inch apart, at least between the registration marks. So I will enter in 0.5 as my spacing, but as you notice, this is generally the default. The copies are now displayed in this preview window. My job is all ready to cut, so I will now click Send. What the cutter will then do is it'll start scanning for the marks. It'll start with the first set of marks and then cut the graphics within those sets of marks. It'll go move on to the next marks, read those, and then cut. And then the next marks, and read those, and then cut, until it gets to the end of the job. In the end, you will notice that all the contour cuts are dead on accurate using this method.